Perhaps in order to make a comparison, it's probably important to give you a little bit of history, because the Axis Syllabus really started as a brainchild, and so most of it remained in the province of vision. And it's really only recently that I began to see what I wanted to manifest. And that shape that is now taking form is expressed through the competence and the initiative of the various teachers who really have risen to individual status and have gained access to a broad audience on their own. So now they're recruiting interested people from around the world for the Axis Syllabus community. And that's something which, before it was, I think the Axis Syllabus was perceived by the general public as my endeavor. And there was some negative critique that was associated with this kind of proprietary vision of the Axis Syllabus. More and more it's becoming clear that it's a community project. And that's something that I'm really happy about. I think it's actually really quite beautiful, because since we all consider each other fellow researchers, there's this truly democratic participation in the evolution of the Axis Syllabus, but also in its expression. We have a common goal, we have different ways of going about it, and each one of these different ways is contributory. So maybe the other thing is that the aspect of the research, it's ongoing, of course, and there's always more fields, but I feel like the work has really gotten fresh wind from the scientific community, which is now opening up a whole new chapter in the understanding of fascia, which is something that is an extremely pertinent subject for us as movers. So I think the Axis Syllabus is really benefiting from this new cross-pollination of the various scientific sectors. Also, the way medicine and the alternative medical communities are now finally communicating to each other, and how really ancient precepts about the structure of the universe and the nature of consciousness and the architectural principles on which the human body is built are really coming into testable evidence, because now the technology is becoming so fine, but also there's different sectors that are now starting to actually communicate their findings to each other. So I think it's a very exciting period generally, but I feel that the Axis Syllabus can really serve, we're in a very good position to serve as a connecting point from the various scientific and medical communities to the movers, to the people who are interested in training their bodies and training each other. Each person comes with their own interest, their own history, and their own competence. And especially if they're considering to be Axis Syllabus teachers, one of the things we're looking for in a fellow researcher is personal initiative, dedicated, self-motivated discipline, and an interest in helping us pioneer this research. So it's not, the Axis Syllabus is not, or the Axis Syllabus community is not a context where people are trained in a particular format, which they then replicate to the general public. It's an expanding field of investigation. And each person who's coming into this community is considered a potential participant in the expansion. So that kind of answers both questions. And the idea about this is that no one person could ever have the total perspective, or have the final answer, or the absolute truth. We know that to be a fact. So the idea is that putting more heads together, we can get a clearer story, and each one of us can teach each other something. Let me just talk about teaching, because I really feel that teaching is much more of a facilitative, at least let's say productive teaching is much more facilitative than instructive. if you want to benefit from the human resources that a student has, in other words, their possibility to reason, to think critically, to integrate what they know already, and to take in new things and synthesize that in a unique way, then you have to rely on their resources. And you can put them in a context which will inspire that process. But if you insist that they follow your agenda, then you have to take responsibility for the negative repercussions as well. And also, that maintains a feedback loop which is bound to decouple from ongoing research. Since we know now that what we know now is limited by our present technology and the current availability of data, that at some point in the future we will know more. So let's continue the advance. So rather than dominate the process of instruction by drill and testing, let's open up the field for mutual exploration, where the teacher invites the student into this common process. I think that that's up-to-date teaching standards. Well, I'd like to clear something up just for the record, that the Axis Syllabus itself is not any method. It's not a technique. Techniques might arise from it, or methods might come out of it. But that's the purview of the community that uses the information. The Axis Syllabus itself is just information. It's information taken from various sectors and coordinated in an accessible format, like a dictionary. And so I think the Axis Syllabus is maybe the first, or maybe one in a series of attempts to create an operating manual for the human body in various movement situations. But in itself, it doesn't suggest an activity. So we don't have to be afraid of it. It's just a dictionary. It's just a list of things. And it might suggest certain ways of going about things that would be perhaps healthier or more intelligent. Right? But it's not going to say, don't do ballet, don't do yoga, and don't do any of the other things. In fact, no, embrace. Let's take all of these legacies of form and bring them into an evolutionary context where we can update them to the current understandings. I understand. I consider myself an artist, and that was my prime motivation for creating. And I feel that I invest all of that creative effort, that creative energy into various things that I do. The artistic side of physical expression is undeniable, because that's where all of the things we're learning come to bear. You might learn how you bend your knee, or how your spine flexes laterally, but those are just vowels that you need to string along into a word, and that word needs to be placed in context with the sentence, and the sentence, and so on and so forth. And that's what, to me, that's what artistic expression is. It's the use of the language in order to be able to communicate something that you feel is pertinent about your experience of living here. And that's, I think, the fundamental role of the artist in society. So the Axis Syllabus is, like a dictionary, is a way of helping us to understand the etymology, right, or the anthropological context of the body's history, and the syntax of various uses, and correct spelling, grammar, etc., etc. And these things will help us to better articulate ourselves as we move forward. So artistic research is fundamental, and I continue to do performance projects, and I continue to collaborate with other members of the Axis community, and they collaborate with each other. Some of them are much more active than I in the performance sphere, because I feel that at a certain point I had to decide whether I was going to sponsor the next generation of artists by investing in an educational platform that would allow them to defend their ideas to a public which is increasingly more ignorant, and also to build an educational platform for salvaging the bodies of those who've been injured by negative practices or ignorant practices in the movement training industry and dance field, but also to safeguard the health of future artists. And I think that, you know, updating or upgrading the public awareness about the miracle of engineering that the human body is will help sensitize them also to the challenge and the triumph of physical creation. And I think that what I'm doing is trying to lay a groundwork for the preservation of an art form that I feel is intrinsic with human evolution. I was warmly received. There was a rather large crowd, and the director was there. The director of the National Ballet was present, and he was very open, and I felt his genuine concern and interest. And I think that you know, when leaders show integrity, that it's inspiring. And I felt there was a general openness. And there were people from all walks of life. There were dancers, physiotherapists, osteopaths, athletes, people who work in, there was a man who was working with people in prison. So there was a good spectrum, I think, of ages and activities. And I felt there was a general level of educated appreciation for what I was talking about. I have to compare that with the International Fascia Congress in Berlin in June, where I was shocked at the ignorance of the people who were present. Many of them had no idea what fascia was, which I think is really surprising considering the nature of the event. Even more surprising was that the director of the ballet invited me to come and teach the junior class the following day, which I think that's a concrete testament to his understanding. So about the content, basically the two main points of the discourse were, one, that we're still doing the same thing in our exercise protocols and training procedures, even though we have information now which suggests an all-round rethinking. And that these practices are contributing to injury in the long run and also in the short run. And that we need to consider our social responsibility as choreographers and physical trainers when we take on the job of educating the youth or rehabilitating those who've been injured. And the other thing is that even though fascia has taken precedence as a you know, a fascinating new subject, that it doesn't obscure the other structures in the body. In fact, it brings them into a new hierarchy of understanding. And one of the things that I cited was that 70 to 90% of injuries that occur, especially for athletes, occur in the joints, in the articulations. And I think that that's an indication that the fascia is actually, or could be, that the fascia is an enemy of the skeleton or an enemy of the joints if it's not well educated. And so that brings new importance to the understanding of joint anatomy. So rather than rejecting the study of bones and their contribution to tensegrity, it brings us back right to this study as an asset to understanding how we establish tensegrity. So yes, tensegrity is a basic issue. Yeah, those 2 points, and I think you know, among other things, perhaps that fascia really brings up this idea of history conditioning, that we are shaped by what we do, and that's why it's so important to understand what we're doing and why. Ignorance about stretching, ignorance about exercise, lack of evidence for any of these protocols for their positive benefit really needs to be fleshed out now so that we can move forward. And also that fascia reveals this, it reveals the intimate variations of each person. It means, because as soon as we go into detail, we see how different each one of us is. And we see that we can't provide care, training support, or a career perspective unless we understand the individual variations and unless we enhance these capacities and understand the limitations of each person. Yeah, I mean, I hope that, you know, I know that that one of the fundamental fears of any innovative movement is that existing institutions and people who have struggled and sacrificed for status and position will crumble, and that these people will lose their jobs, they'll lose their livelihoods, and they'll lose their own career perspectives. Traditions of training people and creating, you know, establishing certain market niches where activity is protected by accepted norms and social respect and so on. These are things, you know, they were fought for. People demonstrated and worked hard to explain to our leaders the value of these activities and try to safeguard them. Perhaps the way they went about it led to, you know, rigidification of these institutions to the point where where they represent a social danger, and where there's so little, where it's somehow, you know, the way people are trained crushes all the artistic interest and life out of the young artists. But I don't, you know what I mean? I understand the intrepidation. I understand the hesitance to accept new impulses. But what I would hope that people understand eventually is that the Axis Syllabus community is not against any of the institutions, that we as a group believe in the necessity of form and legacy, that we're not here to put down or destroy, that we're here just to enhance the process of going forward, and the idea is to take as many with us as possible. And I think that also that I don't know about, I can't speak for the other people now, but personally I'm not attached to the Axis Syllabus. Like I said, I think it's one of the first attempts to create an operating manual or an archive, a dictionary of human syntax and grammar for the body, but I think it's just one of the first. And we're limited right now by the technology and data access of our day. And eventually there will be future points in history, or there will be a point in the future where people will be able to do more. And they'll be able to coordinate the data in a better way. So, but I'm striving also, and I think that I get on everyone's nerves a little bit about this, because there's still many people in the Axis community that would like to see the Axis Syllabus as an activity, as a technique, and as a method, and try to establish its commercial value as a brand name. But for me, this is extremely antithetical to the future value, to its evolutionary value, to the contribution that such an effort to consolidate data and render it accessible could be. So I keep agitating and saying, reminding people, it's just a list. What we do with it is something else. You know? But let's make sure that we retain this idea of an open access field. That's why when somebody says, I'd like to teach the Axis Syllabus, the first question I ask is, well, you know, if the data's out there, you can buy the book, you can write to me and I'll answer any question you want. If you come to class, I'm not gonna keep any secrets from you. We're gonna tell you about hip axis, metacenter, side bending, breathing mechanics. We're gonna tell you all of our theories. Why do you want to collaborate with us? You know, what's the point? Why do you want to take on the responsibility? I mean, okay, there's privileges, but why do you want to take on the responsibility of helping us to develop this thing? You can take anything you want. Nothing's brand name. You can use it in your class if you want. You can come to class and document. You know, there's no holds on the way the thing could evolve. You can participate in many different ways. So why do you want to teach this? You know, and I think that when a person finally comes into our group, usually they're aware that the value of being involved in such a group effort is the closeness to the innovation, is this excitement with being on the edge of understanding, and also the potential in a group of educated, supportive colleagues who look at your work and try to help you to understand the flaws and to evolve towards your own potential. So, yeah, that's, thank you for this opportunity.
No, thank you. It's perfecto. That's good.